Okay, usually we'll be having shir around 9:15 on Mondays and Thursdays. Today's Wednesday. It's because I'm leaving tomorrow morning back to Meretz Yisrael. So I figured I'd get one shir in. And also 9 o'clock tonight, because we have a simcha. Donnie Mechlowitz is engaged and he's having an engagement party, so we're going to have a shir for like a half hour, 35 minutes. And then we'll go join the simcha. And it happens to be that Masechtas Gittin is really my favorite Masechta. I learned it many times in yeshiva, and I once had a Rosh Yeshiva. I learned it to say, my Rosh Yeshiva once said to me, he said, the Masechta he's most successful with in yeshiva is Masechtas Gittin. Now I want to share with you a question before I even begin. This is really bothering me every time I begin Masechta Gittin. It's a question that edges on me. What's the case of a get? A husband divorces his wife. Yeah? A husband gives a get to his wife. Why can't the Mishnah begin with a regular case? Hamagaresh es ishtay. A husband divorces his wife. Why do we begin Masechta Gittin with such a queer case of a shliach who finds himself in Medina Sayyam, traveling all the way to Eretz Yisrael? And not only that, listen to this. Masechta Gittin is full of that. Most of Masechta Gittin discusses shlichus. If you take note of the names of the prokim in Masechta Gittin, you'll notice the first parak is called Hamevi, a shliach that brings a get. The second parak is called Hamevi. The fourth parak is called, anybody know? Ashaleach. The sixth parak is called Ha'omer Eskabel, again shlichus. Only the ninth parak, the last parak in the Masechta, finally we get to Hamagaresh es Ishtay. It's called Hamagaresh. Is anyone bothered by this question? I want to share with you Chasam Sofer. Blow your mind away. Chasam Sofer says, when we come to discuss Gerushin, a get, sad news. Divorce is terrible. Even to discuss it and learn about it is a big deal. So Chazal were so sensitive. They tried to find the best case scenario of a get and discuss the best case scenario of a get. You know what that is? That's when the two parties get divorced out of their goodness of their hearts. How so? The husband finds himself in Medina Sayyam. Now in those days, make it back there to Israel alive. It's dangerous. He's afraid that his wife, who's sitting in Eretz Yisrael, might never see him again. What's going to happen is, if she doesn't see him again, she's an aguna. She doesn't know what's going to happen to him. She can't get remarried. The worst situation a person can be in limbo. Not only that, even if she finds out that he's dead, she can become a Yavama. She needs chalitza. Get married to his brother if there's no kids. So what does he do? He loves her so much, he sends her a get. To free her of shackles of Egon, right? So when we're discussing Gittin, we choose to open the Masechta with a queer case of Hamevi get in Medina Sayyam, because we want to discuss the best possible scenario of a get. With that introduction, let's begin. The first word of the Mishnah is Hamevi. Someone brings a get. Now the Mishnah makes a blanket statement. Does it say who's bringing this get? No. It's a shliach. Now every get involves two parties, the husband and the wife. The Torah says the husband can make a shliach, can appoint a shliach to do what he's supposed to be doing, handing over the get. And the wife can also appoint a shliach and do whatever she's supposed to be doing, and that is to be mekabel, to accept the get. Okay? So now, he is in Medina Sayyam, and she is in Eretz Yisrael. So the Chachamim went and said that when a shliach brings from Medina Sayyam to Eretz Yisrael, he must say, B'fanei nechtav, b'fanei nechtav. Who's bringing this get? Which shliach? Is it her shliach that she appointed to accept the get for her in Medina Sayyam and bring it back to Eretz Yisrael? Or are we discussing his shliach? His shliach that he wants to send the get to his wife to give it in Eretz Yisrael. Which shliach are we discussing? It's a blanket statement. The Mishnah says Hamevi. Now, I'm sure everybody knows when the Mishnah is not mafarish, it's a blanket statement. The Gemara calls kapasik v'tani. Loishna ha'ish v'loishna ha'isha. Doesn't matter, right? Both. Logic dictates if the Mishnah didn't specify, it must be there's no difference between a husband and a wife. No matter who appointed the shliach, if the shliach brings that get from Medina Sayyam to Eretz Yisrael, he must say b'fanei nechtav, b'fanei nechtav. Comes Rashi. Rashi says, "U'shliach zeh habal osay shliach lo'elacha." This shliach, you know what shliach it is? It's the Baal shliach. The Baal appointed him as a shliach lo'elacha. Who told Rashi to say this? Where's Rashi coming from? Why is Rashi limiting the case of the Mishnah to a husband who appointed a shliach and not a wife? Excluding that the wife didn't appoint a shliach, only the husband. Why does Rashi do that? We have to ask the question. Where does Rashi get it from?
Well, it must be, because later on it says nichtav and nichtav. So if the wife was to give it, then it wouldn't say nichtav and nichtav later on in the Mishnah.
But the shliach of the wife could actually be present and watch the ksiva of the get. It's possible, right? So if Chazal would have instituted that the shliach of the wife has to come back and say b'fanei nechtav, b'fanei nechtav, then the shliach of the wife would have had to be present and watch the ksiva, watch the Baal write the get. It would have been possible. Why not? Where's Rashi coming from? So comes the Ran. And the Ran says a very interesting svara. The Ran says that why do we say b'fanei nechtav to begin with? Are we actually afraid that the Baal, that the shliach forged this get? Are we afraid that the get is no good? Is that why Chazal instituted the Yisrael b'fanei nechtav? Are we afraid that the get is no good, that the get forged, that the shliach forged the get? No. What's the raya? Who could think of a raya that that's not the reason why we are saying b'fanei nechtav? It's not because we're afraid that the shliach forged this get. That's not why. We're not afraid of anything. If the shliach brings a get, we are sure that this get is legit. That's not why we're saying b'fanei nechtav. What's the reason for b'fanei nechtav?
Because there are situations where you don't have to say it.
Because of what?
There are situations where you don't have to say it.
Because there are situations where you don't have to say it. Excellent. Because the last line of the Mishnah tells us that if you bring a get from Eretz Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say b'fanei nechtav. Now I ask you, if we are afraid that the get was forged, what's the difference whether the get is brought in Eretz Yisrael or the get is brought from Medina Sayyam? Right? How can you differentiate where the get is coming from? If the chashash, if the speculation is that the get is forged, is actually forged, then you should always have to say b'fanei nechtav, like you said. From the fact that you see that you don't always have to say b'fanei nechtav must be that there's a different reason why we say it all together. It's not because we're actually afraid that the get was forged. What's the reason? The reason is because we're afraid the Baal might cause us problems. In 3 weeks' time, in a year time, the Baal might come back and say, I'm changing my mind, I want to cause my ex-wife some issues, problems, and he'll come to Eretz Yisrael, and he'll come be Ma'ara. Right? That's the chashash. So the Ran says like this. The Ran says that chashash is only when the Baal appoints a shliach to go and bring a get to the woman. Not when the wife appoints a shliach to bring back the get. Why? What's the difference? Why are we only afraid that the Baal is going to be ma'arer only if he's the one that appointed a shliach to go give the get, but when she appoints the shliach to receive the get and bring it back, then we're not afraid? Says the Ran, simple. Because when she appoints the shliach to bring her the get, as soon as the husband gives the get to the shliach, the gerushin is done. So he's goymer a megarish. He made up his mind to divorce her and never to think about her again. It's over. But when he appoints the shliach goes away from him. He has the get in his hand. The gerushin is not done. The gerushin doesn't take place until the shliach gets there months later to the woman, and only then finds the wife and hands the get to the wife. So there, since when the Baal, the husband, gives the get to his appointed shliach to bring it to his wife, the gerushin doesn't happen on the spot, so he's not goymer and megarish. That means he doesn't make up 100% his mind that he wants to actually divorce her. Giving the get is not a simon, is not a haichacha, is not a proof that he's goymer and megarish, that he's done with her. Because he's not. The gerushin doesn't happen then. It only happens months later. So there we're still afraid he might come back and cause problems. Okay, that's the Ran. Now the Ran brings a raya. So far so good. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
Doesn't that assume that the Baal is just basically a decent guy and is actually a real queer, like a real issue here? So the reason he's going to be ma'arer is because he genuinely thinks that. But isn't that the assumption? Why don't we just say the Baal's a rush, he wants to muck around? It makes no difference that way. Sure.
He's saying maybe the Baal's a rush. He just wants to cause her problems.
Ma'ara means the Baal wants to cause problems. So in that sense, it doesn't matter. In reality, it could be that he really did or didn't want to divorce her. Surely it's neither here nor there.
It seems you're right. You're asking a good question. He's saying maybe the Baal is just a Russia and he wants to cause her problems. So why? What does it make a difference whether the gerushin happens?
He's not a Russia.
Right. The Ran does assume that. Correct. The Ran assumes the Baal is not a Russia. The Ran assumes the Baal is still wavering.
Right.
And since the gerushin doesn't happen right away when he appoints a shliach, therefore, in his mind, if he runs after him or whatever, he runs and he might get there on time and protest, it might help. But not that he's a Russian. Then what?
It's the best case of good.
Best case scenario. Very good. Excellent.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Very nice. Yeah.
The Ram seems to be okay with this idea of if you were appointing a shliach to go send a get to your wife, it would work, even though you're not being gomer megarish. He's not even sure if he wants it, but you can still appoint a shliach and...
Correct, yeah. That's a parsha in the Torah, you can appoint a shliach, yeah.
That's enough das to appoint a shliach, you're not gomer megarish.
Aha, you're raising a good point. He's saying if he's not actually gomer megarish, so why does the minoi shlichus help?
Why does it
help to appoint a shliach?
How does it work?
Right. It seems that at the time that he's appointing the shliach, he's 100%. But because in the back of his mind he knows that it doesn't happen right away, then he might be chayzer, he might retract. There's room in his mind to retract, but at the time that he actually appoints the shliach, that's what he wants. But because it's not happening at that moment, there's still room in his mind, in the back of his mind, he's still thinking, maybe I could still back out if I retract. So there's a retraction going on over here. It's not that when the time that he's appointing the shliach, he's not sure. It's only because when he appointed the shliach and he was 100% sure at that time, but he knew in the back of his mind that it's still not over yet, that he could retract and go and protest it.
Who says you need to be your stance?
No, for shlichus, you need a gemir's das. In order to appoint a shliach to go ahead and bring the get to his wife, you need a gemir's das for that.
We don't have to say that he had the chashash. We can just say the metzius is that.
The metzius is that
that sometimes people
are chayzer. Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So now the Ran has a raya. What's the Ran's raya? The Ran has a raya that when the Ran has a raya, he has proof to what he's saying. He brings a raya from the Gemara in Daf Chav Dalet. The Gemara says that when an isha brings a get, she doesn't have to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. So the Ran says, hey, if an isha herself brings a get, doesn't have to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. Obviously, the reason is because since the gerushin happened right away, so we're not afraid for the Baal anymore. So you see that there's a fundamental difference when the Baal appoints a shliach to go give the get to the shliach which is appointed by the wife or the wife herself, where the gerushin happens right away. Now, the Ran's raya is debatable. It's not so simple. Because the Gemara doesn't say it outright. The Gemara doesn't say that if an isha brings a get, she does not have to say b'fana nechtam. The Gemara does not say that. That's the Ran's interpretation of the Gemara. So it's important for me to quote you the Gemara, because then we'll see that the Ravid argues on this. Okay? This is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says like this. The Mishnah starts, Ha'isha atzma, the Isha herself, Hamavia Gita, that brings her get. The Mishnah is in Chav Gimel and Beis. Okay? Ha'isha atzma Hamavia Gita. Isha herself, the Isha, the wife herself, could bring a get from Adina Sayah. Or Bulvad, except Sheitzricha Loyla b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. The wife herself has to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. Okay? So the Mishnah is the wife who accepts a get from her husband in Medina Sayyam and brings it to Eretz Yisrael has to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. Now the Gemara takes issue with that. The Gemara is a problem. The Gemara says, Ha'isha, Mechimati, the Gemara is Nachav Dal Amar Aleph, Mechimati Gita Liyada, as soon as she accepts the get, Igrishala, she's divorced. Now what's the Gemara's question? So what? You're right. As soon as the Isha accepted the get of Medina Sayyam, she's divorced. So what's the Gemara's question? Still, the Mishnah says she brings it to Eretz Yisrael, she has to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. What's the Gemara's problem? So the Ram learns the Gemara's problem is that because the gerushin happened right away, that she shouldn't have to say b'fana nechtam, b'fana nechtam. And that's the Gemara's question. Isha, the woman, as soon as she accepted it, she's divorced. So the Ram, that's the Ram's interpretation, by the way, of the Gemara's question. And that's why the Ran brings a raya. You see where she gets divorced right away. B'fana nechtam is not necessary. Why not? Because he's goymer megarish. He made up his mind, and therefore by a shliach, which the Isha appointed, you have the same svara. The gerushin happens right away, and that's it. He doesn't have to say b'fana nechtam either. That's the Ran's raya. Now, if you take a look at the Ravid in a few places. But the best place really to look at where the Ravid is most clear is in Hilchos Avoda, Perik Vav, the end of Perik Vav in Hilchos Avoda. He's going with the Rambam. The Rambam learns like the Ram. And the Ravid says an amazing thing. The Ravid says, it can't be that the pshat in the Gemara's question is that as soon as the Isha gets the get, she receives the get, she doesn't need any kiyum. There's no b'fana nechtam necessary. Why not? And I'm going to read you the lashon of the Ravid in the middle because this is the most important lashon. This is incorrect, the Ravid says. Where do we find shtar shekaral of irur sheyigva by b'lay kiyum? Where do we ever find the shtar that if there's an irur on the shtar, you don't need kiyum? Listen to the Ravid's question. I mean, if there's ever a difficult Ravid, Rabbi said, this is it. The Ravid is equating get with other shtaris. The Ravid says, how could the Rambam and the Ran say that if an Isha brings a get, there's no kiyum necessary? No kiyum is necessary. No b'fana nechtav, no kiyum, nothing. She gets away scot-free, she can get married. The Ravid says, why is it different than shtaris? Every shtar If there's an error on the star, he needs kiyum. Get's no different. Get's no different. Of course, get is different. The Mishnah says, first of all, we said that there's never a real chashash that the get is forged, like you pointed out, because you see places you don't even have to say b'far nechtam. So there's no real chashash that there's a forgery on the get. And secondly, even when there is a chashash, b'far nechtam is sufficient. You don't need more than b'far nechtam. And the Ravid goes ahead and the Ravid says, it's even worse. Get is not even, b'far nechtam is not even enough. When a Isha brings a get, she needs 2 Eidim to go ahead and be Mekayim the star. Where will you ever find star shekar lavir sheyikva bebeloy kiyum? You need kiyum. How could the Ravid assume? What type of question is this on the Rambam? The Ravid is telling us that a get and star is equal. Just like a star, when there's an error in a star, you need kiyum. You need 2 Eidim to go be Mekayim the star. Get also, when an Isha brings a get, she needs kiyum. B'far nechtam was not enough, the Ravid says. Take a look, I'm just going to skip. We don't have time to read the whole Ravid. But the very last line of the Ravid, the last few lines, V'aseichel mora, right? Logic dictates, Sha'afim lo ya'arer, even if he's not married, ein lahater eishes ish, the isur, eved b'loy kiyum aget, you always need kiyum aget, even if there's no ir, even if the Baal wasn't ma'ar yet. And this is extremely difficult to understand. The Ravid is matzrich, the Ravid requires kiyum, 2 Eidim to come be mekayim this get, when the Isha brings a get, just like other stars. B'far nechtam is not enough, and it seems that the Ravid's reason is because we're afraid that it's actually forged. And the kasha is, we know that the Mishnah is mavur. The Mishnah, it seems that that's never the chashash. By get, we're never afraid for forgery. So this is the bomb question on the Ravid. I want to share with you a Noida B'Yehuda. Noida B'Yehuda answers this question. And the reason why I want to talk about this, people ask me, why are we doing, it's a David's Dadi, like what does it have to do with the Sugya, can't we just go like to the Gemara, and can't we just move forward? And I think that this is really a fundamental Yesod in the Sugya, okay? So listen to what Noida B'Yehuda says. Why is get different than other stars? A star comes l'faneinu, a star comes to Beis Din. It needs kiyum. Why is get any different? Anybody have any suggestions? Why is get different? Why don't we need kiyum by a get? Huh? Aguna. Takanas agunas. Why? What's that? Takanas agunas. The get comes all the way from Medina Sayyam, right? Teretz Yisrael. She gets the get. And she has to go look for Eidim. She can never actually be Mekayim this get. There's no Eidim. Why not? The Eidim all the way back there. The get's coming from Medina Sayyam. There's Takanas Agunais. So Chazal, they didn't want a woman to stay unmarried, so they said, listen, we'll be Mekel. We'll allow her to say B'far nechtam. We'll allow the Shliach to say B'far nechtam. Says the Noida B'Yehuda, an unbelievable thing. Where is there Takanas Agunas? Takanas Agunas is only when the woman is in Eretz Yisrael, the Baal is all the way in China, right? And the Eidim, who the Baal signed on the get, are miles, thousands of miles away from where the woman actually accepts the get. So she can never get to those Eidim. But if the woman accepts the get in the place where the Baal is, in the very same place, there's no Takanas Agunas over there. She has the ability, if she wants, to go look for those Eidim. If she's in the same place where the Baal wrote the get, right? The Baal writes the get, and she accepts the get in that very same city where the Eidim signed the get. It's easy to find those Eidim. She can be Mekayim the get on the spot. And then go to Eretz Yisrael. So there is no Takanas Agunas there. Says the Noida Yehuda, that's the difference. The Ravid is discussing only where a woman, the woman herself, who accepts the get from the husband and then comes to Eretz Yisrael. Ravid says, there's no B'fana Nechtam there, because the whole B'fana Nechtam is because of Takanas Agunos. But here in this case, there is no Takanas Agunos, says the Noida Yehuda. Because she accepted the get, B'Mokam HaBaal, where the Baal is. So she had the ability to go and be Mekayim the get, B'Mokam HaBaal, wherever the Baal was, wrote the get, and then traveled to Eretz Yisrael with a get that's already Mekuyim. So for that reason, today the Yehuda says, the Ravid says she needs Kiyum. If she actually comes back to Eretz Yisrael, not even B'fana Nechtam is going to help. She's going to need Kiyum like every other star. The whole reason why she doesn't need Kiyum to begin with is because Takanas Agunas. In this particular case that the Ravid is discussing, in that particular case there is no Takanas Agunas because she accepted the get B'Mokam HaBaal, wherever the Baal was, and then traveled to Eretz Yisrael. In such a case, there's no Takanas Agunas, and therefore, B'fana Nechtam is not even going to help. She's going to need actual Kiyum. Okay?
Well, she'll need Nichtav and Nichtam as well. She'll need both.
Well, it's not going to be enough. The whole B'fana
that and the Aiden as well.
She needs Aiden. She's going to need Aiden.
Does she not need? Would she not need Nichtav and Nichtam as well?
No, that's much better than Nichtav and Nichtam. If she has Aiden, that's the best. If you have that, then you won't need that. B'fana Nechtam. But the point is that the Ravid learns that because she accepted the get, B'Mokam HaBaal, there's no Takanas Agunas, and therefore she'll need Kiyum. So now, what would the Ravid hold where Shliach L'Kabbalah, right? If she appoints a Shliach and goes to Medina Sayyam and brings that get from Medina Sayyam back to Eretz Yisrael, what would the Ravid hold? Would the B'fana Nechtam help? Of course, because there's Takanas Agunas. Because she wasn't around to be Mekayim the get, because she wasn't there to accept the get from the Baal. She sent the Shliach. So there, you're not too happy, Daniel, about this. But there, the Shliach brings it back. There, the Noida says the Ravid could agree to the Ran and the Rambam that the Shliach L'Kabbalah will not have to say B'fana Nechtam, like the Ran, because he's Gomer Megarish.
So that's the case when they're far away.
So I'm just saying, the Ravid, from the fact that the Ravid learns that when the woman herself brings a get from Medina Sayyam back to Eretz Yisrael, it needs Kiyum, we can't deduct from that the Ravid also learns that a Shliach L'Kabbalah, if her Shliach comes, that it also needs Kiyum. It's not a Raya, because there are two different svaras. When she comes to the Baal and accepts the get, there's a particular svara why she needs Kiyum, because there's no Takanas Agunas there.
Maybe the Sheikh Kabbalah should
You want to say that maybe it's the responsibility of the Shliach L'Kabbalah, just like her,
as a representative
of the Isha, and that's what you want to say also.
Debating saying it.
What?
I'm debating saying it.
You're debating saying that. Why are you debating? Why not?
Because it could, at the end of the day, it's not part of Kabbalah's get. It's that it needs to be Mekayim. You don't need to do that.
That's the process. You have to do that for it to be Mekayim.
She's divorced if it's not. If a husband gives a get to a wife and no Kiyum is done, she's divorced. It still happened. The question: should she have been prudent and got Kiyum done? In a way, yes, and then when she gets to Eretz Yisrael, then she needs proper Kiyum according to the Rabbit. The fact that the Shliach didn't do it is not necessarily
okay. It's debatable. I have to agree with Daniel that the Shliach, it's not the Shliach's responsibility. A Shliach L'Kabbalah by definition means a Shliach to accept the get. And as soon as he accepts the get, she's divorced. Part of a Shlichus in the divorce process isn't to go and worry about the Kiyum. So we're not going to require.
The fact you have to say B'fana Nechtam means we're worried.
That's a takana because of agunas. Because there's agunas. They were worried of agunas, so they said, okay, listen, we'll require to say B'fana Nechtam. But if not for agunas, why should the shliach mitzad the shlichus itself is not required to go in the time again. Now I'm just going to finish off. The Ran and the Rambam have an entirely different reason why get is different than shtaris. Okay, listen carefully. This is what I want to get to. The Ravid learns that the reason why get is different than shtar is because takanas agunus, like you said. The reason why every time a get comes b'fanenu, we're not afraid maybe it's forged. That's not our concern. We're not afraid that it's forged. That's how we started the shir. We're never afraid, okay, listen, we're never afraid. The b'fanen nechtam is not there because we're afraid that maybe the get is forged. That's not the reason why we say b'fanen nechtam. Like you said, because you see that in certain places you don't even have to say b'fanen nechtam. So it's not because we're afraid that the get is forged. The reason is because we're afraid of the Ur HaBaal. The Baal might cause problems. That's the reason. Now we ask, why aren't we afraid maybe the get is forged? By other shtaris, we're afraid that maybe the shtar is a forged shtar. Why is it different? So the natural answer is because takanas agunas. We're not afraid that it's forged because takanas agunas. If we'll be afraid that it's forged, then we'll run into problems.
We're told in the last year is because of chutzpah.
Unless the reason why we're not afraid that it's forged, that's midoraisa. But midrabban, that's midoraisa. But that's midoraisa. It's because of chutzpah. But with Rabbanan, we're still afraid.
Right.
But with Rabbanan, we're still afraid. But like get, not even with Rabbanan. That's the thing. But like get, we're not even afraid with Rabbanan that it's forged. Okay? Why not? Because it's the Takanas Agunas. That's how the Ravid learns. That's how the Ravid explains the Ravid. The Rambam, it's very interesting to know. The Rambam and the Rambam say the whole different reason. Why is get different than other stars? Why aren't we afraid that it's forged by a get? So the Rambam, I think I copied it for you guys. The Rambam says, okay, you take a look. Page it's on. It's one before the last page. One before the last page of the Marakaimas. It's the last 5 words in Hilchos Gerish and Perek Zayin. She'ein dinei ha'isurin k'dinei mamanis. Isurin and mamanis are 2 separate things. They're 2 independent things. Dinei isurin and dinei mamanis are different. Is that an explanation? No. But the Rambam alludes to it. The Rambam says, Ein dinei isurin k'dinei mamanis. But he's very vague. It's cryptic. He doesn't say what the difference is. So I want to share with you the Ran, what the Ran says. The Ran, I don't know if I copied it. 1 second. Okay, I did copy it. The Ran is on the 3rd page in the Marakaimas. The 3rd page, the Ran says like this. The first wide line, the widest line. Okay? Lefi she'ein isha zu mamono shel baal ela b'shas atzmai li'nosei. A woman is not a husband's property. She's not a husband's property. She's not the money of a husband. She doesn't belong. The husband doesn't own his wife. Doesn't own his wife. And that's the fundamental difference between a mominus, a shtar of mominus, and the get. The reason why, I'm going to explain this, the reason why the Ran learns, and this is the way the Rambam understands also, the difference between a shtar and get is because a shtar, if I come with a shtar to Bezdin and I say that your field, you sold me your field, so we're discussing your field, it's your moment, right? So Bezdin has the obligation to maybe speculate that I'm lying, because we're dealing with something that you own. So that's why we're choishish, maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's forged. But by a get, when Beis Din sees that she comes with a get, right? Or a shliach comes with a get, the Baal is not around. There's no reason for us to speculate that maybe the get is forged. She's not the Baal's property. The Baal doesn't own her. We're only going to be afraid when it's something that belongs to you. We'll try to look out for you. We'll try to protect your item. We'll try to protect your field, your money. But when it's not yours, it's just a shaila. Have you ever had a shaila basa b'chalav? Call up a rav, you ask a shaila, yes or no. There's a shaila. You have a shtar, is it good or not? Well, we see a shtar, why not? Right? The only time we're actually afraid that it's forged is when we're dealing with somebody's property. But if it's ein ishazuma moina shal baal, then we're not going to hold her back and she can do whatever she wants. Okay? So we have a fundamental machlokes, again, we have a fundamental machlokes between the Ravid and the Rambam and the Ran. The Ravid learns the reason, the way we explained it in the Yehuda, the reason why get is different than other stars is because Takanas Agunas. And I want to show you, it's not just the Ravid. If you look at the Taisvis, like take a look at the first page, the bottom Taisvis, it says, the first line of the bottom Taisvis, the first line of the bottom Taisvis says, I will call Zman, the Loyosef Baal Ma'arir, Nisas al Piaget, as long as the Baal doesn't come and is Ma'arir, if we don't say that it's forged, why not? Because Takanas Agunas. So we have Tosfos, we have the Ravid that learn that the reason why get is different than other stars is because Takanas Agunas. We're not afraid that when a get comes before us, we're not afraid maybe it's forged. You know why? Takanas Agunas. What are we afraid of? We're trying to protect the woman because maybe the Baal is going to cause problems later on. For that, we're going to say b'fan nechtam. But again, it's very important. We're never afraid by a get that the get is forged. We are not actually afraid that it's forged. What we're afraid of is the Baal is going to come Mimara. Why aren't we afraid that it's forged? Why is it different than any other star? There we come in Machlekes Rishonim. Taisvis and the Ravid learn because Takanas Agunos, and the Rambam and the Ran learn because it's a fundamental difference between a Surim and Mamanis. The only time there's a din to actually speculate that it's forged is only when we're dealing with someone's property, someone's Mammon. But since an Isha is not Mammon Shal Baal, there's nothing to worry about.
Why should be the fact that it's been in Mammon being more common than having Mati and Surim?
You're saying, so usually we say a Surim or more Chomer.
Yeah.
I understand. I'll tell you why. It's a good question. The reason is because what does it mean that we're afraid that it's forged? Whenever we're afraid that it's forged, it's because we're trying to protect somebody else. We don't really care. We're trying to protect somebody. So the only time we have the obligation to assume that it's forged in order to protect somebody is when you're dealing with somebody's property. But the woman is not the husband's property. So it's just a question in the Surah. Is she divorced or isn't she? Well, if she has a get, why should we assume otherwise?
Can you understand that to mean that regardless of monotonous, there's people are going to forge it because, if it's forged, it might even gain instantly, alright? Whereas with getting, because she's not monotonous, as a result, someone you can just take her. It's not the point. People are going to be in Syria for something which they can't just gain instantly. Could you understand the one?
I can understand that, but there are plenty of gains that forging a get also. If she wants out of a marriage, then I could think of 5 different reasons why how she would gain by forging a get. You're trying to say that by Mammon is there's
Kula would forge stars anyway to get money, whereas there's certain cases that people to gain.
You're saying by Mammon we have to speculate maybe it's forged because otherwise everybody would just forge and gain money. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Whereas by a get,
it's possible. Right.
Okay, I don't want to hold you back anymore. Okay, thank you very much.
Good.
And Bez Hashem, I'll be back after Sukkot. And Gemar Chasim Tova for everybody. And I'm looking forward, Bez Hashem, to beginning again after Sukkot.